The moment the fork hit the plate, I knew something in me had cracked. We were halfway through dinner at Mark's house, a casual Thursday meal that felt more like an audition for patience. I'd offered to chip in for a plumber, just a simple fix for the downstairs sink. Mark didn't even look at me. "We're not taking handouts from a charity case." His voice was light, a laugh tucked behind the words like it was some harmless joke. The table went still. His wife shifted awkwardly, sipping her wine like she hadn't heard it. My grandson didn't pause, just kept chewing like it was any other meal. I set my fork down, slowly, deliberately. It clattered against the porcelain louder than it should have. Mark finally looked up. "What?" he said. "You know I'm kidding." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My lungs tightened around the oxygen, but it wasn't the air. It was the shame, the quiet, casual cruelty in his voice. I used to carry that boy on my shoulders. Now I was a punchline at his dinner table. His wife laughed, thin, nervous. He didn't mean anything by it. I nodded once, not for them, for myself. I didn't trust my voice not to shake. The rest of the dinner blurred. Something about interest rates, vacation plans, granite counters. I barely touched my food. When I finally got home, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the nightlight in the corner. The oxygen tank hummed beside me. Even it sounded embarrassed to be there. Charity case. I used to manage a team of 40. I built systems that kept people fed, insured, and safe. I buried Elaine with enough dignity to know she never had to worry. But now I was a man they humored, a seat they tolerated. I leaned forward, reached under the bed, and pulled out the worn leather folder. It smelled like old paper and older memories. Inside were documents, legal, clean, original. The trust, the will, Elaine's handwriting on the back flap, just in case. I flipped to the main clause. Mark's name in print and ink, clear as day. He thought I was a charity case. He forgot who wrote the check. I set the folder on my nightstand and stared at the ceiling. I could hear Elaine's voice in the back of my mind, calm, firm. If they ever lose respect, you don't owe them a damn thing. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. Don't give everything to people who wouldn't give you their decency. I whispered into the dark, "Not anymore." The oxygen tank hissed once, steady, like it agreed. The lock was rusted. It took 3 tries before the key finally turned. The storage unit smelled like mildew and cardboard. I hadn't been here in years, not since Elaine passed. I used to bring her here every spring just to sort through old boxes and reminisce. She'd call it our memory maze. Now it just looked like a graveyard of the past. I pulled the chain light. Dim, yellow, barely enough to see. I scanned the shelves, looking for the black accordion file she always insisted we keep at the back behind the Christmas bins. There it was, buried under a wool blanket, and a box labeled "Tax Stuff, 1998. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of papers, neatly clipped and labeled in Elaine's handwriting. Utility bills, home appraisals, mortgage releases. And then the trust, the real one. I unfolded it carefully. Pages aged to a soft cream. Elaine's signature, graceful, strong. Mine a little less steady but real. Mark's name listed as beneficiary. Back then we never questioned it. We thought love was permanent. I flipped to the final page and saw a small envelope tucked inside. No label, just my name, written in ink that had started to fade. I opened it. "If love ever turns cruel, don't leave what we built in their hands. You're not a burden, Richard. You're the keeper of everything we earned. Trust yourself more than you trust their politeness. You'll know when it's time." I read it 3 times before I could even breathe again. Elaine always knew. She saw it coming long before I did. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and sat down on a crate. My pulse had settled, but my chest ached, not from the oxygen, but from the clarity. I had been holding on to a dream of who my son used to be. But the man who called me a charity case, he didn't deserve Elaine's legacy. I pulled out my phone and found Helen's number. It was still saved from years ago, though I hadn't called since Elaine's funeral. She picked up on the second ring. "Richard." "It's me," I said, my voice shaking. "I need your help. I haven't heard from you in ages." "It's about the trust," I said. "And Mark, he said something cruel, and I think it's time." Silence, then softly, "What did he say?" "He called me a charity case." Another pause. "Come in, tomorrow first thing, I'll clear the afternoon." I swallowed hard. "You remember Elaine?" "Of course," she said. "She had fire in her spine." "She left me a letter," I said. "Told me not to leave what we built in their hands." Helen's voice didn't waver. "Then let's do this right." I stood, folder in hand, surrounded by the dust of everything we used to be, and just enough light to see the way forward. The door to Helen's office clicked shut behind me like a vault sealing a secret. She stood as I walked in, thinner than I remembered, but just as sharp-eyed. The framed law degrees behind her looked untouched by time. "Still using the same coffee mug," I said, nodding to the chipped white ceramic. She smiled faintly. "Some things age well." I sat across from her and slid the trust folder across the polished desk. She opened it, eyes scanning each page with quick, surgical movements. "You still hold full authority," she said. "No joint trustees, no stipulations beyond your lifetime." I nodded. "So I can change it." "You can do more than that," she replied. "You can rewrite the ending." I exhaled slowly, the oxygen tank hissing beside me. "He called me a charity case." She didn't blink, just leaned forward. "Then let's make it literal." She pulled out a legal pad, flipping to a fresh page. "Who would Elaine have wanted this to go to?" I didn't hesitate. The education fund she volunteered for, the one in Willow Creek. They're building a literacy wing. Helen tapped her pen once against the pad. "We could establish a scholarship in her name, direct the estate to cover operating costs, maybe fund a mentorship program, and the rest can endow the wing permanently." I stared at the ceiling for a moment, blinking against the sting in my eyes. She taught there every Tuesday, even when her joints hurt, said the kids made her feel useful. "She was useful," Helen said softly, "to everyone but Mark, apparently." We spent the next hour drafting the amendment. It wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a scalpel to everything that had rotted under the surface. Every paragraph peeled away the lie I'd been fed, that being old meant being powerless. Helen read back the final clause. "All distributions, assets, and properties formerly assigned to Mark Thomas Marshall are hereby revoked, redirected, and reassigned to the Elaine Marshall Literacy Fund, effective upon filing." I signed it. My hand shook a little, not from doubt but from release. Helen set the paper aside and folded her hands. "Let's hold it for now." I looked at her. "Why?" "Because men like your son don't just fall. They dig, and he's not done digging yet." I nodded slowly. "He's already started." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then let him finish the hole. We'll bury his entitlement with it." I stood, gripping the chair for balance. The tank wheezed gently behind me. As I reached the door, I paused. "I thought Elaine and I were building something for our son." "You were," she said. "You just didn't know it wasn't him." I stepped into the hallway, a quiet hum in my chest, like the feeling of a storm retreating. For the first time in a long while, I was rewriting the story, in ink Elaine would have approved of. He showed up without warning. No call, no text, just his car in my driveway like nothing had happened. I opened the door slow, already bracing. He had that same performative smile, the one he used on realtors and waiters. "Hey, Dad," Mark said, "can we talk?" I nodded and stepped aside. He didn't waste time. "Look, we're finalizing the new place. Mortgage company needs a cosigner, just a formality." I raised an eyebrow. You want me to sign for your loan? He sat on the edge of my armchair like it was a throne. Just to help us get a better rate. I mean, you don't really own anything useful anymore, but your name still carries weight on paper. I didn't react, just nodded like I didn't hear the insult tucked neatly between the interest rate jargon. Of course, I said, voice soft. Just give me a day to look it over. He beamed, knew you'd understand. I offered him tea. Listened to him ramble about square footage, walk-in closets, and how the new house would finally feel like an upgrade. All while my phone, tucked between couch cushions, recorded every word. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table and played the audio back. You don't really own anything useful anymore. I forwarded the clip to Helen, added a quick note. He came by. Hear how he talks when he thinks I'm weak. Her reply came 10 minutes later. Perfect. We now have a pattern: financial manipulation, verbal degradation, and entitlement. Let's set the press release clock. I read the message twice, then once more. There it was, the shape of justice forming beneath the surface. Mark thought I was still the man too proud to say no. The man who'd co-sign, cash out, and stay quiet. But that version of me died somewhere between his insult and Elaine's letter. He called me a charity case. Now he wanted a house, with me as the key. I brewed tea slowly, the steam fogging my glasses. I thought about all the nights I'd paced the halls of that old house, checking the locks, worrying about the mortgage, while he slept, free of burden. I remembered Elaine packing lunches for him well into college, mailing checks, making excuses. She did it out of love. I would undo it out of respect. I sipped the tea and stared out the window. Let him finish the application. Let him dream of granite countertops and double garages. The real paperwork had already been signed, and none of it had his name on it anymore. The restaurant Helen picked was quiet, tucked away behind the courthouse, where no one asked questions and the waitstaff spoke in whispers. The reporter's name was Elise. She looked young but tired, the kind of tired that comes from hearing too many stories like mine. She shook my hand gently and sat across from me, placing her recorder between us. I really appreciate you doing this, she said. I'm not here for sympathy, I told her, just truth. She nodded, that's all I want. She asked me to start from the beginning, from the night Mark made the joke. I recited it word for word, pausing only once when I said charity case. That phrase still caught in my throat like gravel. She let the silence sit, didn't rush. And after that, I went home, I said, and pulled out the folder my wife and I created years ago, our trust, the one we thought would protect everything we built, and I changed it. To what? To something that actually means something. I told her about Elaine, how she volunteered every Tuesday, how she'd bring home construction paper bookmarks and stories about kids learning to read their first book. She believed education was the only fair inheritance, I said. Mark didn't understand that. He doesn't understand much beyond square footage and resale value. And the estate, she asked. Redirected, I said, every cent, to the Elaine Marshall Literacy Fund. They're building a library wing now. She'll be remembered for what mattered, not for the son who forgot her. Elise clicked off the recorder. He didn't just steal money. No, I said, he stole from the memory of who we were. She stared at me for a moment, then packed up her bag. Thank you, I think this story will matter. 2 days later, the headline hit every inbox and feed in the region. He called his father a charity case. Now his inheritance is feeding 200 kids. The photo was simple. Me sitting on a bench outside the center, one hand resting on my cane, the other holding Elaine's old teacher's mug. By nightfall, donations had started pouring in. People wrote messages like, "My father deserved this kind of dignity too," or "For Elaine, for every forgotten elder." The center director called me in tears. "We're fully funded now," she said. The library wing is going to carry her name carved in stone. Mark hasn't called. I doubt he's seen the article yet. But the world has. And for once I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a man who told the truth and watched it ripple. The call came just after 7. "Let's talk, Dad, just us," Mark said, voice calm, almost tender, practiced. We agreed to meet at a neutral cafe, one of those places with soft lighting and instrumental jazz in the background. The kind of place people go to pretend they aren't furious. He was already there when I arrived, seated near the window. He stood, offered a hand. I nodded at it but didn't shake. He got to the point fast. "Look, I've had time to think. Maybe I came off the wrong way. The whole charity case comment, bad timing, dumb joke." I was stressed. I didn't say anything, just waited. He took a deep breath. "We're family, Dad. I don't want things to end like this. We've got a legacy to think about for Connor, for the name." Legacy, a word he used like a poker chip. "I know you talked to Helen," he continued, "and I understand you were upset, but maybe we can fix it together." I stirred my tea, let him squirm a little longer. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Hear what I'm proposing. You keep the house. I don't want to fight about property, but the rest, the assets, the investment accounts, the fund, that's where I think we can meet halfway." I set my cup down, reached into my coat pocket. "This is the only version now," I said, sliding the trust amendment across the table. He glanced at it, expecting to negotiate, but as he read, his lips parted slightly. Color drained from his face. You gave it away." "No," I said, "I gave it back, to someone who never asked for it." He blinked, hands shaking as he turned to the last page. "The Elaine Marshall Literacy Fund." I nodded once. "She used to sit in your kitchen cutting bookmarks out of cereal boxes," I said, "for kids who couldn't afford real ones. You thought it was silly." "I thought," he stammered, "I didn't know you'd." "No," I interrupted. "You didn't, you assumed, because you thought my silence was approval." He stared at me, eyes wide, mouth open, but no words came. Behind him, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long streaks of amber across the table. His shadow stretched thin. "I don't want your forgiveness," he said quietly. "I didn't bring it," I replied. I stood, the oxygen tank clicking gently at my side. "Enjoy the tea," I said. "It's already paid for." As I walked away, I didn't look back. Some things are meant to be left behind, especially men who only remember they have a father when the money runs out. The ribbon fluttered as they cut it. Red silk, the kind Elaine would have called unnecessary. But the plaque beneath it, bronze polished, was perfect. "The Elaine Marshall Library Wing, for the ones who will read the world anew." I sat in the third row off to the side. Didn't want to be in front, didn't want applause, I just wanted to see it. Children filed in, some clutching new books, others pointing at the mural painted along the back wall. Elaine's favorite quote was there too: "Reading gives us someplace to go when we have to stay where we are." I remember the first time she said that to me. I had just lost my job. She handed me a novel and said, "Let's go somewhere for a while." One of the students stood on tiptoe, trying to see the plaque better. A teacher lifted him up, and he touched Elaine's name like it might speak back. Helen sat beside me, smiling softly. "She'd be proud," she whispered. I nodded, words stuck in my throat. A local reporter approached gently. "Mr. Marshall, would you be willing to say a few words for the segment?" I hesitated, then I stood. The camera light blinked red, and the microphone felt heavy in my hand. "My wife believed education was the greatest inheritance," I said. "She gave her time, her heart, and her hope to kids who didn't always have much else. I just followed her lead." That was all. I sat back down. Later that night, the segment aired on Channel 9. They showed clips of the kids reading, zoomed in on the plaque, replayed my quote over soft music. The phone rang once. Mark's name lit up the screen. I watched it ring, watched it stop. No voicemail, no second call. I turned off the ringer and walked outside. The night air was cool, clean. Across the street, the library windows still glowed. I could see silhouettes moving inside, volunteers arranging books, chairs being set for tomorrow's reading circle. Elaine would have been there with her sleeves rolled up, her hair pinned back, a pencil tucked behind her ear. I sat on the bench near the gate and leaned back. My oxygen tank clicked softly beside me. I didn't need anything else. Not his apology. Not his approval. Not his voice in the dark, pretending to understand. What I needed was already carved in bronze. And what I gave wasn't taken. It was planted. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Mark was still tall, broad-shouldered, always slightly overdressed, but there was something hollow behind his eyes. He stood on my porch in the same coat he wore 5 years ago at Elaine's funeral, the collar frayed now, buttons dulled. "I saw the interview," he said. "The plaque, the scholarship fund." I nodded once, let the door stay halfway open. "You embarrassed me," he blurted, voice tight. "You ruined my life over one stupid comment." I looked him in the face, really looked. For the first time in years, I didn't see a son. I saw a man who hadn't grown up, only grown bitter. "No," I said calmly. "You ruined your own life. I just stopped funding the illusion." He blinked, like he hadn't expected that. "I was angry," he said, softer. "That night at dinner, I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I didn't think." "No," I cut in, "you didn't." He swallowed. "So, is it too late?" "For what?" "To make things right." I stepped back, opened the door a little wider. "You hungry?" He hesitated. "Yeah, sure." I walked to the kitchen, opened the freezer. Empty shelves stared back at me. I returned with a glass of water. No food, no offer to sit. "The freezer's empty now," I said. "Like your empathy." He looked down, jaw tightening. "You didn't just say a stupid comment," I continued. "You made it clear what I was to you, a resource, an obstacle, an embarrassment. And when that ran out, so did your civility." "I'm still your son," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "You were. Then you traded that in for entitlement." He stood there, shifting on his heels like a boy who'd been scolded in class. I waited to see if he'd say something real, anything honest. He didn't. Just turned and walked down the steps, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. I closed the door behind him with a soft click. No slamming, no yelling, just finality. The living room was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator, still working, even if it had nothing left to cool. I walked to the window and watched him cross the street, his figure slowly swallowed by the dusk. There was no triumph in it, just space. Space where guilt used to live. Space where his voice no longer echoed. And in that silence, I felt something return. Not victory. Peace. The final envelope came on a Thursday. Thick, embossed, sealed with Helen's wax stamp like something from another century. Inside were 3 notarized copies of the amended trust, signed, filed, witnessed. Irrevocable. I ran my fingers over the page. Elaine's name in the header, the scholarship clause beneath it, and the final signature, mine, firmer than I remembered it being. Helen had included a small note. "It's done, no contest, no loopholes, you've made sure of that." I stared at it for a long time, not in disbelief, in relief. The weight was real, but it was finally where it belonged. I placed one copy into a new manila folder, wrote "Foundation" across the top. Along with it, I enclosed a handwritten note on Elaine's old stationery, the kind with the blue lilies around the border. Elaine would have been proud. Use it well, and keep her name alive in every book you hand to a child. I sealed the envelope slowly. like I was sealing a part of us into something that would outlive both our names. That afternoon, I returned to the old house just one last time. The realtor had asked if I wanted a final walkthrough. I told her I didn't need to see the rooms. I just needed one drawer. The study still smelled like dust and varnish. My desk, the one Elaine made me keep even when it didn't match her design plans, sat untouched. I opened the bottom drawer. Old letters, paper clips, birthday cards we never mailed. And at the very bottom, folded between two yellowing pages of a manual I never read, was a photograph. Mark, 8 years old, sitting on my shoulders in the backyard, both of us covered in grass and smiles. Elaine must have taken it on the old film camera. His arms around my forehead, my hands holding him steady. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Not because I missed him, but because I missed then, before legacy turned into leverage, before family turned into negotiation. I didn't cry, I'd done that already. But I did press the photo flat and slip it into an envelope marked keep. Not remember, not forgive. Just keep. Some things don't need to be displayed, just preserved. I locked the house one last time, left the keys on the hook. As I stepped off the porch, the wind caught my coat, and for a moment I thought I smelled her perfume, lilac, and library books. The house wasn't mine anymore, but the name carved into that library wing was. And no one, not Mark, not time, not even grief, could take that away now. The kids were already gathered when I arrived, some on the floor, others in beanbags, their shoes kicked off in the corner. A summer reading circle just like Elaine used to run. One girl with round glasses and pigtails held up her book like a trophy. "Look, this one's mine," she shouted. A few of the older kids waved when they saw me. "Hi, Mr. Marshall," one boy called out. But it was the little girl in the corner who caught me off guard. She waddled over, no older than 6, her hands sticky from a juice pouch. She wrapped her arms around my legs and looked up. "You're the library man," she said. I smiled, warmth rising in my chest like a soft tide. "I suppose I am." That was enough. The director offered me a seat near the window, the same spot Elaine once claimed as her reading post. Light poured in across the floor. On the far wall, a new mural stretched across the plaster, a tree with open books for leaves. In the center, carved in wood, her name. Elaine Marshall Literacy Wing. The plaque shined beneath it, not polished for vanity, but because the kids kept touching it with their little fingers. I sat on the bench outside after the reading circle ended. The heat of summer didn't bother me the way it used to. My tank was lighter now, upgraded to a smaller model. Easier to carry, easier to forget. Mark hadn't called in weeks. Connor never texted. And for the first time, that silence felt like peace. I knew what I gave up, and I knew what I gained. The foundation director came outside with a folder. The endowment fund just hit another milestone. Over 300 kids enrolled now. We're expanding the after-school program. I nodded. She would have liked that. She's the reason it exists. As she walked back in, I stayed. Let the quiet wrap around me like a familiar coat. The bench I sat on had a carving in its backrest. Elaine's name again, this time beside mine. We used to talk about legacy like it was something you left after, but maybe it's something you build into everything you do while you're still here. My family may never speak to me again, but 100 children have already whispered her name. And in every page they turn, in every sentence they stumble through, something of her, of us, is living on. I'm not a charity case. I'm the man who gave it back to someone who never asked, but always deserved it. And for the first time in years, I feel like the man I was before they forgot who I used to be.